Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I'm really glad to present you one of our research with Jean-Louis today, and it's about industrialization of tracking of botnet operations and activities. And we will show you a practical use case with large cone mining threat actors that we discover. So today we will talk about what we discover and how we discover it. It's about the Tor to web gateway. So we'll have a quick introduction of what about the Tor web gateways and what are the security issue and maybe opportunities there for monitoring. And then we will discuss about something that we discovered through a Tor to web gateway about an illegitimate crypto miners. Then further on, we will go to the analysis, further analysis and the graph analysis of those crypto mining activities. And then we will explain how we share those indicators, how you can get them. And we will explain what we are planning as a future works on this topic. So just a quick introduction about what are Tor to web gateways. I'm pretty sure many of you are already familiar with that. So it's basically services on the internet to access Tor hidden services, but from standard internet. There are plenty of public services on the internet like that, like Onion 2, Tor2web.it, and many others. Those one are, I think, convenient for a lot of users. Nevertheless, they introduce many risks for the users. When you connect to those one, you don't really know where you are connecting to. Those kind of Tor2web services can intercept all the traffic, tamper the traffic. Even some Tor2web, for example, are including advertising directly on the web page. Some are even malicious, are redirecting, are doing binary injection and stuff like that. And even some are even used for hidden services. So it's not really the best approach to connect to Tor hidden services, but it's convenient and many people are using that. And there are already open source software for operating Tor to web gateways. So which is quite interesting because many exist on the internet and they are accessible to everyone. But last year in August 2020, Jean-Louis and I, we were in a restaurant in Luxembourg, and yeah, we were enjoying the last time restaurant during COVID time. So it was between the two COVID pandemic, and we were discussing about Tor to web gateways. And we had this idea of like, yes, okay, how do you trust those Tor to web gateways, and why not running our own to see what's really going on with Tor to web services? So what we decided to do is to basically operate one. And the only thing that we did is we did some advertising. So we advertised on Twitter and on some various websites about those Tor to web services. And really quickly, we received already a lot of HTTP requests. Some were just like testing the services and so on. But in October last year, we started to receive very strange requests, and especially the referrer part was containing such kind of entry that you can see there. And as you can see, this one is like giving some details and so on about IP addresses. You have some specific services. You have even base64 data. So it's really triggered our curiosity, and we were like wondering what is all about. Why do we start to receive such kind of requests? So when we started to decode those base64 values, we saw those kind of entries, and I think for many of you it's very familiar. It's those cron tab entries. So you have those cron tab entries, and they are all indeed pretty suspicious. And we are in this interesting position of being a Tor to web service that we were able to connect all those entries there. And at the same time, we were able to automatically collect the binaries associated to the script mentioned there in the encoded server. So we started to collect this information, and we like design a system to automatically analyze and collect all this information. So the base system is the following. So we have Tor to web services accessible from the internet. It's running on FHE with mod proxy. We have a pool of Tor services running. So like that, you can quickly access the services, especially that if you run Tor to web services, you want to have a quick service that's accessible and running. And at the same time, we were operating a complete logging systems with mod security. So we were able to log all the HTTP requests there. And those logs were sent through one of our projects called D4 which is a collection mechanism for sensors, where we were sending all this information for further processing, like graph analysis, MISP export to share indicators, and so on with security researchers.
Yes. So D4, what it does is that it collects all the log file produced by Mod Security, and then we grok those log files and push the results into a Redis graph, and then we use a combination of Cypher requests and Redis search also to navigate the data. So then we can use those requests to have visualization on the data. And this visualization is done with Redis Insight. So for instance, here you have a Cypher request that use Redis search. So we have a Redis search request on the date, and then we look at all the nodes that were active in April 2021, and it produces. I can switch slide, Alex. Okay, and it produces this kind of graphs. So here you can see all the bots, and so in orange or yellow, and all the C2s, so the hidden services C2s that are reached by the bots in April. So then you can navigate the data. So next we have how we try to make sense of what we add in those base 64 encoded fields. So we use Redis search for that. So here, for instance, if we use some request on HTTP or HTTPS to get all the addresses that are rich with wget or curl, we can have this kind of results. So you can see that you have cron jobs with a wget, and then you have an IP that can be used as an IOC. You also see that, for instance, the last one is something that targets Redis. So it may be interesting in the next slide to do a search on this Redis string. So then you have more information about how this botnet is actually exploiting Redis to download some bash script and execute it. Next. Yes, and so we were doing this kind of analysis on the data we had, and at the same time, you had concurrently like other analyses that popped up on the internet. And for instance, you have one from Unit 42, so Palo Alto Networks, where they discussed systemd miner and pgminer, and they were discussing exactly the same kind of requests from bots using Tor2 Web or Tor gateways. And you have also another analysis from Zscaler that has been done in January about the Dreambus botnet, where the analyst really goes deeply into each module of this malware, like targeting Redis, PostgreSQL, Yarn, Jenkins, Spark, SSH, all those services. So from our point of view, being on the network, it was easier for us to have all the list of the host, all the hidden services, because we were not working from the binaries, we were working from the network. So in the next slide, you see all the lists of hidden services we have, and here we mentioned on the right-hand side if they were mentioned of the different reports. So for instance, the first one is mentioned in the Dreambus reports. And actually, in the next slide, if you look into the graph of all the interactions between binaries and hidden services, you see that there are a lot of different interactions. But we were interested into understanding how much they were hosting the same binaries. So if you do in the next slide the same requests, but targeting just one hash, then you see that this, so it's the greenish blue points, all those binaries actually share the same hash, but they have different names. So or different names or different properties. So that's why it's different nodes. But all those hosts, those hidden services were actually hosting the same files. So this is just for one file. So this file is actually hosted by 25 hidden services. So in the next slide, we corrected or at least added what we think is the relation between all those things. They're actually all related. Like you had different, like Dreambus, pgminer, systemd-miner, it's more or less the same kind of factors behind it. Or they reuse infrastructure, they reuse modules, and it's iterating on the same infrastructure. That's what we believe from our point of view here. Then we looked into the binaries also. So at first, what we did with the binaries is we did some dynamic analysis because we had to unpack this. And then reading this Keller article about Dreambus, they mentioned that actually it was packed with UPX, and it was just the attacker damaged the UPX magic bit to make the UPX tool unable to open this or to decompress this. So you just have to patch this. So sometimes it's not exactly the same value. You see, for instance, on the right-hand side, it's the same one that you have on this Keller article. And the left-hand side, it's one like we find the most. And when you patch this, then you can decompress it. And you can start to do, you can open IDA or do call strings on it, or things like this. So in the next slide, what we do is that we build Yara rule just for that. So you see, we have those two fields that are used to erase the UPX magic bit, and we know the location in the binaries. So if you use this to do a retro hunt on VirusTotal, you will find a lot of files that share the same properties. So in the next slide, for instance, you see that until now, what we saw with XMR mining botnets, you had workers or bots communicating with the mining pool with the Straton protocol. And then this mining pool was pushing those farm blocks on the Monero blockchain to get money. Now, in the next slide, it's a bit different. What you have is that you have those workers, they communicate with the Stratum protocol with a Stratum proxy. And then if you see here what's framed, so you have actually user and path, it's X. You cannot have a direct link to the mining pool, a direct link to the wallet that is behind it, or the user and password and everything. So you just get a URL that goes to a Stratum proxy. So when you do the retro hunt with using the Yara rule on VirusTotal, for instance, you will be able to retrieve all the binaries that are doing this XMR mining. And in the next slide, we see that we have on 47 binaries. So from the 15th of January, we see that actually all those XMR Stratum proxies, they don't change over binary repacking. So the botnet operators, they just repack to avoid detection, but actually behind it, for instance, just for the mining parts, they share this set of Stratum proxies. So then what we can look at, because if you want to have more details about the binaries, what you can do is go and check the other analysis, because they are very thorough and you will learn a lot about each module. But here I think the value is more about the network then. So here what we show is the amount of bots we have for each month. So here the idea is that each month we take a snapshot of the data we have. So you see that at the beginning we had like roughly 1,500 bots, and it's like getting bigger and bigger, and now we have like something like 15,000 bots in this network. And the total amount of bots seen over the period is almost 30,000, like it's a lot of bots. Then in the next slide, to give you a rough idea of how much bots stays in those botnets, we can see that actually you have like really a big area of bots that stays maybe until 45 days, something like this. But most of the bots, they won't stay more than that. And also, what is interesting to see, the next slide, is the presence of bots that are present in the botnet from the very beginning, at least for our view, because we didn't log before. And for instance, we have 8 bots that are present from day one, that are still present today, that reached 20 hidden services. So they reach almost all the hidden services. And they're all from China. So we don't know if actually, because the same thing, when you look at the binaries you find on VirusTotal, most of the submitters are from China or those areas. So we don't know if it's the attackers that have some kind of like I don't know, canaries in there, like something to know it works, or if it's really badly configured machines that are not that are completely unattended and that stays in the botnet for 6 months. Then we have also to compute it, like the lifespan of hidden services. So it looks like actually they don't change much. They add more hidden services, but they keep the old one. So for instance, the Dream Bus one is something you can actually see in some articles regarding those botnets in 2019. It's still active today. So you have some others that are in V2, like Trump something, APT-GET something. All of those are still active, but now they add new one. And so they keep those. But for the attacker, it's really convenient to have hidden services because you can move them easily and Tor can go through NATs. And so I think that's why they keep them. They have no incentive to change them. So then we go on the sharing of indicators. Maybe Alex, you want to say a word about that?
Yeah. So just to summarize quickly what Jean-Louis was mentioning. So we had this interesting position that we were monitoring from the network perspective, the activity of the botnet and the different groups using Tor2 Web Gateway services. But at one point we were like, okay, it's interesting to have this kind of data set, but what can we do with that data set? Can we share it with others? And especially to victims or compromised infrastructure. So as you can see, the main target are high-performance computer systems or things where running the mining of Monero is an interest. So by seeing that, we were like, okay, we need to share a kind of information. So we decided to, as maybe some of you already know, we are operating various mixed instances for sharing information. So we have this MISP event, which is a kind of master event where we have the generic information about the botnet, and then we publish extended event. So it's an extension to the event with the update of the botnet. So like that, it can be used for notifications to third parties to tell that they have been compromised, but it's a good way to see the current evolution and to see even the impact of the takedowns and notifications on the different victims that you notified. We were able to make a quick overview through the dashboard features in MISP. So like that, we can see the event update and see how far the activity is going up and down. What we have seen is for this infrastructure and what Jean-Louis was mentioning, it's quite stable. I mean, they are running hidden services for months. They are doing some regular updates. They gain more and more bots. So it's quite successful for them at the end. And we can see that by looking at the event update and especially how many objects have been updated and so on. So for us, it's a quick win to look at this and to see the evolutions and seeing the impact of us as being security guys monitoring and telling other safety that, okay, you have to be careful about those machines being compromised, and seeing how fast the attacker is taking over new machines and compromising and mining coins on different systems. So for us, it was key. If you want to get access to those data sets, just send an email to info@circle.lu and we can give you access to one of the MISP communities where we share such kind of indicators. So in addition to that, we have some plans, some future plans. We mentioned that we are operating some Tor2 Web entry points. we might extend it to multiple access points because it's the attackers tend to use different services. Maybe they don't all know that some are monitored, so some are abused, and so on. Another thing that we want to do is to fasten the binary collections, to make it faster, to be able to make the automatic detection and so on, share it back, and then to share back obviously the indicator of compromise, so like that the notification can be faster. Another thing that we want to do is to dig more into the compromise themselves, to see what we can get out of it, and to assess in the release backend. And what we want to do is to generate additional OSINT misgiven report on a daily basis to easily notify victims. One of the goals is to notify victims being compromised and send automatically through RT. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us in the Q&A sessions. If you want to ask us questions, and so on, we will be more than happy to answer you. Just a quick side note before closing. There are some legal aspects. So if you operate Tor2Web gateways, there are some ethical requirements. Some of those are obviously operated for illegal purposes. But if you operate it for security monitoring and so on, please share back the result to the victims and to the CSIR to improve security. And again, these Tor2Web services are abused by the attacker, and users using those services can be abused too. So don't forget that if you expose for security reasons Tor2Web services, you give access to Tor-hidden services, and you can be considered as the hoster of the different services. So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for listening to us. And don't hesitate to ask us questions and answer. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.